Benedict Arnold is one of the only people that I know of with the name Benedict. Well, except for Benedict Cumberbatch, I guess. But, despite his rare name and being an American war hero, that wouldn't be enough for him. This is the story about how one of George Washington's most esteemed generals became America's most famous traitor. Born on January 14th, 1741, in Norwich, Connecticut, Benedict Arnold was brought up in a fairly rich family. Before even turning 15 years old, 4 out of 5 of his siblings had passed away. The passing of his siblings turned Benedict's father to drinking. His father's alcoholism had taken quite a toll on the family's wealth, so much so that Benedict wasn't able to attend college. Luckily, his mother was able to secure an apprenticeship for him as an apothecary. In 1757, Benedict enlisted in the provincial militia during the French and Indian War. Unable to help defend Fort William Henry, he was sent home after only 13 days of serving. By the time the British had issued the Stamp Act and Sugar Act, Benedict had made quite a name for himself in New Haven, Connecticut, becoming a pharmacist and buying 3 trading ships. But those acts severely oppressed merchant colonists such as Benedict. In 1767, Benedict married Margaret Mansfield. A year later, their son, intelligently named Benedict Arnold, was born. 2 years later, Richard Arnold was born, and then 3 years after that, Henry Arnold was born. In 1775, the Revolutionary War had started, with the Americans and British exchanging fire in Lexington, Massachusetts. Benedict was elected as a captain in the Connecticut militia and led his company to help with the siege of Boston. The Americans won and pushed the British out of the city. Benedict, being filled with a rush of adrenaline from his victory, thought of capturing Fort Ticonderoga. He was given a colonel's commission by the Massachusetts Committee of Safety and met up with the Colonel Commandant of the Green Mountain Boys militia, Ethan Allen. They rode up to Ticonderoga in upstate New York and captured the weakly defended fort with ease. On Benedict's way home, he learned his wife had passed away. While mourning his wife's death, he heard a brilliant idea of invading Quebec. He immediately got over his wife's death and asked George Washington to give him a colonel's commission in the Continental Army so he could help with the invasion and battle of Quebec. Washington agreed, and Benedict took off towards Quebec with over 1,000 men, 300 of which turned around and went home. 200 died on the way there. If it couldn't get any worse, Benedict assisted with the assault for a single day and got his left leg completely wounded. And you know what Washington had to say about his failure? Oh, he failed completely? Here, you get to be a brigadier general. Why not? 2 years later, Benedict learned that Congress had denied his promotion to Major General. He immediately rode to Philadelphia to speak with Congress about his rank when he found out about a British force approaching Connecticut. He led a militia force to stop the British and held them down, and then he got shot in the leg again. He continued riding on to Philadelphia in order to speak with Congress, who decided that his recent action against the British was sufficient enough for a promotion. 6 months later, Major General Arnold took part in the battles of Saratoga, where he disobeyed General Horatio Gates's direct orders and led attacks towards the British defenses. He was shot in the left leg again. He was shot. Benedict refused to get his leg amputated, getting it roughly set instead, making his left leg 2 inches shorter than his right. In June 1778, the British were forced to evacuate Philadelphia. This allowed Washington to appoint Benedict as the military commander of Philadelphia. This made him a prominent figure in the city, allowing him to marry 19-year-old loyalist Peggy Shippen. Losing his business and being wounded in battle multiple times made him extremely upset. He was also charged with abusing his power for profit. Washington only gave him a slap on the wrist for that, but to Benedict, that felt like another shot to his leg. His wife Peggy had swayed him to believe that he had been neglected by the Americans and convinced him to open negotiations with the British. Major John Andre, the head of British intelligence, sent a letter telling Benedict how to communicate, such as invisible ink and codes. A year later, Benedict had given Major Andre multiple troop locations and locations of supply depots through letters. General Henry Clinton wanted to gain control of the Hudson River and insisted that Andre get defense plans for American-held forts along the river from Benedict. Speaking of which, earlier on, Benedict had resigned his military command of Philadelphia and was given command of West Point, a fort along the Hudson River. He wrote to the British, and he was willing to give West Point to them for a rank as Major General in the British Army, and £1,000 as compensation, and £20,000. General Clinton wrote back, 20,000 and a rank as Major General, but that's it. Arnold got to work sabotaging the defenses at West Point, draining supplies, scattering soldiers, and never ordering repairs when needed. After 11 days of sabotaging the fort, Benedict and Major Andre had set a date to meet, the night of the 21st of September. Andre arrived and ordered the ship crew to dim the lights as they're in hostile territory and didn't want the Americans to see the boat. After talking until the morning with Benedict, Major Andre's ship was fired upon by an American cannon, forcing the ship to retreat and leaving Andre to flee back to New York by foot. Benedict gave Andre passes so he could get through to British lines, along with plans for West Point. On the 23rd, Andre was captured by militiamen, allowing the plans for West Point to be found. Major Andre was sent back to Colonel John Jameson. John was able to convince John that John should Why did I write this? John was able to convince John that John should be sent back to Benedict instead of staying there with John. While being escorted by a lieutenant to be handed back to Benedict, Benjamin Talmadge, the head of American intelligence, ordered Andre to be intercepted and brought back to Jameson. The lieutenant who was escorting Major Andre was sent to inform Benedict of Andre's arrest. On the 24th, when Benedict learned of Andre's arrest, he ordered mariners to row him down to the British side. After learning of his treason, Washington proposed to General Clinton to exchange Benedict for Andre, of which Clinton said no, as it would deter any other possible future defectors. On the 2nd of October, Major Andre was hanged as a spy in Tappan, New York. Due to his plot failing, Benedict was now Brigadier General, which was a demotion from his rank in the Continental Army as a Major General. Plus, they only paid him £6,315 compared to his originally negotiated £20,000. In December of 1780, he was ordered by Clinton to lead a force of 1,600 men into Virginia. After capturing Richmond, he went on a rampage that went on for 5 months. When he got back to New York, he asked General Clinton for permission to go to England to express his thoughts about the war effort to Lord George Germain in person, of which Clinton denied. On October 19, 1781, the British surrendered at the Battle of Yorktown, ending all major land operations during the Revolutionary War. Benedict asked Clinton again, what about now? Can I go to England? Ugh, fine. He went to England to ask Lord George Germain and King George III to reconsider withdrawing from the Americas and continue fighting. But his timing was very unlucky. The anti-war Whig Party had gained the upper hand in Parliament, denying Benedict's wishes to keep fighting. In 1787, Benedict moved with his family to New Brunswick to establish a trade business. It was when he was met with a mob outside of his house he realized they weren't welcome there, so they moved back to London. Benedict Arnold died on the 14th of June, 1801. He had been suffering from gout since the start of the Revolution and it finally caught up with him. He was buried at St. Mary's Church in Battersea, England. Benedict Arnold was a man who believed in liberty and freedom. He joined the Continental Army to fight for these beliefs. And when he felt his sacrifices weren't acknowledged, he switched sides. However, his treason wasn't due to his allegiance. It was due to him being manipulated by his wife and his greed for money. He didn't like the monarchy. He just wanted to fight for the higher paying side. Unfortunately for him, he also chose the losing side. Well, if nobody likes the man, at least his leg got a monument.